Welcome back to another Founder Spotlight. Today I'm sitting down with Jason Reposa of Good Vibes out of Massachusetts. So, Jason, if you could walk us through your product lineup real quick, and then we'll get started.
Sure. So in the Massachusetts market, we make the Good Vibes line of products. That would be the syrups in a tincture bottle. This is a syrup tincture. It is 500 milligrams of THC in this particular product. And we just launched our newest one, which is 1,000 milligram THC syrup. So we also make other purpose-specific ones for instance, a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD THC in a product called Balance. We have two more products going to be launching in those kind of streams. And then we also have our beverage enhancer line, which is the drop-in, the original, the OG. Man, my blur is killing me here. This one in particular is another tincture bottle, but it's a round, and this one is a drop-in product. This is the fastest acting, most control you guys can kind of basically get when you consume. So this is my go-to because the Good Vibes line, I'm a low dose consumer. So the Good Vibes line is actually like pretty heavy for me. So I can only take a few drops before I feel something, where some people will just drink the whole bottle. It's insane how many milligrams of THC people could actually consume in one sitting. And then we have our hemp infused seltzers. These are Delta 9 seltzers. So these particular products are on our Shopify store and available online. Here's our grapefruit. We always like to say we have grapefruit, pineapple, mango, and blood orange. We always like to say with this one though, it's like if you've never tried grapefruit, or if you say you don't like grapefruit, try our grapefruit because you're probably gonna like it.
So it's funny you mentioned the high THC and you being a low dose consumer. I am also a low dose consumer. I was actually having a conversation with my dad a couple weeks ago about how there's plenty of consumers that need 50 to 100 milligrams just to like start to even feel like a little bit of something.
Mm-hmm.
And he was flabbergasted by that. He thought the 10 milligram was like the high limit. I was like, no, there's a lot of people that need way
No, they
more.
go high. Yeah, because, we're one of the companies out there that believes, as a fundamental belief of our company, is that the majority of people who are consuming cannabis are doing it for some medical benefit. Now, I can't, using the word medical, especially in a licensed cannabis market like Massachusetts, is really tricky. You really can't use it. But in this context, I truly do believe that the people who are consuming these high doses, whether they're just trying to relax at the end of the day, or they have back pain, or they want to go to bed, or like they just have tons of stress in their life and they just want to relax. There's a lot of reasons why people want to consume that level, but it's interesting. Our bodies are so interesting in that sense because I could take 3 to 5 milligrams and feel pretty good. Maybe have another 3 to 5 milligrams, which is why the titration of the dosing of the beverage enhancer is so important for me, or even just the drinks themselves, because I can just drink one and feel pretty good, and then drink another, and I can session it out. Versus the Good Vibes product, if I was to take like a dropper full, that's like 16 milligrams or so. That becomes way more complex for me because now I'm just like, all right, it's like a third of a dropper, basically a 5 milligram dose for me. And so for a 5 milligram dose, you don't really taste, I mean, the one I showed you is strawberry. It's like how much strawberry flavor you're getting on a third of a dropper, right? So it's like, there are different types of product lines for different types of people.
Absolutely. So, you spent about 20 years in the tech sector prior to coming into the cannabis industry, and you've successfully exited 2 businesses. So, what led to, the transition from the tech world into cannabis, and how has those experiences impacted how you have been building Good Fields?
Well, like I said, I'm a low dose consumer, and so my original one was like after all the stress of going through the sale of one of the companies specifically, the one that I was the CEO of. The other one was I was a managing partner at that point. I was the CTO, but then someone else had stepped in. I stepped away from the business. My business partner kept on running it, so I had much less stress on that side. It was mostly just board meeting. We just make sure we're doing the right things, and he'd report to us and all that stuff. But as the CEO of the other company, there was a tremendous amount of pressure put on me, especially since there was already an existing business that was doing 8 figures in revenue. So ultimately, we needed to, grow it, scale it, and eventually we decided to sell it, where we, it was a banking thing. And so I'm just like, once you figure out personal finance and banking, what my business partner would always say, banking is the least sexy thing in the world ever. And it's really hard to make it awesome and attractive to people, right? And so from my perspective, I was just like, not that we were out of ideas, we were kind of just like ran out of a little bit of steam. So we're like, let's just sell this and move on to our next thing. So we ended up selling that, and but due to all the stress of due diligence and stuff like that, I ended up locking up my jaw. So I actually had a medical issue that I was dealing with. So I couldn't open my mouth. I could only drink liquids for about a month until I tried cannabis, and it worked. And I was like, oh, like this is what people say will work for stuff like this. And I ended up trying it. It worked for me. And so I said, you know what? Maybe this is my next big thing. And I always wanted to have a product, a tangible physical product, because I come from the tech world and everything's in zeros and ones. And so from very early on, I've always started companies, but I've never really started like a real physical company, at least not like a legitimate company. I had a baseball card store at one point, which was dealing in baseball cards and stuff like that when I was like 11, 12. But since then, it's been basically all digital. And I really wanted something I could hold in my hands. And that's kind of the impetus for doing something, especially like RTD drinks specifically, is extremely attractive to me because just the possibilities are endless. And you're seeing all these new variations coming out. And, people knock us, or not knock us, knock our specific category because everybody's just like, well, you just made a seltzer and I don't like seltzer or I don't like fizzy nut stuff or can you be more creative than creating a seltzer? And I'm like, yeah, but 0 calories, 0 sugar seltzers. When we first created this back in 21 and launched it ultimately in 22 or 2020, I created it ultimately. It wasn't a thing really, right? It was like brand new to a ton of people. So we we settled on seltzer because it is the most mass populous kind of RTD out there. It's like I buy cases and cases of it myself for my kids and my family. So I knew that I wanted to have just a really clean, maybe LaCroix, some of those flavors we're interested in doing, but even just the basics like Polar Seltzer, like the hometown here of Worcester, Massachusetts,
And
Polar Seltzer, they have like lemon lime seltzer, raspberry lime seltzer. They have very fruit forward, but like very simple flavors that are just mass appeal. And that's kind of what we're going for is that mass appeal. And we want to be able to produce volumes and volumes of the stuff and sell volumes and volumes. And so from our perspective, we really wanted to focus on something that's mass attractive versus trying to do some kind of and I'm not knocking anybody for doing this right now, especially in infused, drinks, Delta 9 infused hemp beverages. I'm not knocking you. It's more just the fact that like I'm trying to maximize my audience versus being like I only do like a knockoff bourbon infused with this special smoky whatever, or you know what I mean?
right.
Like I don't know if somebody's doing something like that, but we've had those ideas. We've looked at them. We've done a bunch of R&D. We've got a portfolio of another 10 12 products behind this that we're doing today. So like we have all these recipes already, but it's the market that we're really going after. And the market is they just want something that tastes really, really good, it's a lot of really great flavor, and it gets you high or at least relaxes you at the end of the day. That's why I started the company ultimately is I need to relax at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I have spoken with so many different founders and CEOs, and everyone has a story similar to yours, whether it be chronic injury, traumatic injury, or simply just they couldn't sleep. They all have some sort of story like that of what led to them creating the product that they ultimately did. So kind of moving
It's
on
a
from
common theme.
there, it's a very common thing,
Yeah.
myself included. Um,
Yeah.
but your education obviously is in computer science, and you also had some experience at Seth Godin's MBA program. And how did from computer science to the MBA program, how did that shape your leadership style, and kind of how you have continued to build good feels?
When I went to WPI, that definitely shifted my brain more towards leader versus manager. And that's something they instill upon you on day one. They say, I'm not trying, again, I'm not putting anybody's education down because everybody gets it their own way. And I've hired many people who don't have college degrees. I've hired people who don't even who have a GED, right? So it's not about like your education level or, that Ivy League kind of, oh, we're better than you. But WPI, since it's super project based, you do have to lead from the front. You have to get the stuff done. It's on you to do all this. And they set you up for success in many ways, but it's up for you to swim, right? It's if you want to drown, it'll drown you. But if you're willing to actually put the work in and get the results, you can do it. With that said, I'm a horrible student. I'm not a good student at all. Like I barely graduated high school. How
Same.
I got into a crazy high, highfalutin engineering school. I get maybe it was just my tech abilities that kind of attracted them. But from my perspective, that really set me up as an actual leader versus a manager versus an employee, right? And there's a very big difference. I'm not a great manager. Ask my employees. I'm not awful. Maybe they might say different, but the point being, like, I know where the ball is going, and I'm going there. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting ahead of it. I'm not trying to make sure. I mean, literally, I rated one of the first drinks ever in Massachusetts, right? And of course, they existed before that, but they were talking about the fast acting style, not just like the hey, throw some emulsifier in and drink it, and an hour later you still get high. This is basically like a water-based edible. This is actual technology and thought that went into this. But when it came to the alt MBA program with through Seth Godin, that is an actual. So that was kind of me discovering who I was again because from college until then, I was working the entire time, working for other people, and then for about 10 years, I was working with me and two other business partners on these other companies. So when I got to the alt MBA, it was right around the time where I was selling my company, and I was like, "What am I going to do next?" And I was having this kind of like not a midlife crisis. I mean, I think I might have just turned 40 at that point, but it's like 2019. And I knew there was more to this than what I already knew. And so I was just going on an exploratory phase to figure out, what do I want to do next and who am I? And like, can I level up my skills as a leader, And that provided that program. And the reason why it's called an alt MBA, it's not an accredited program or anything like that. It's really just like they give you a bunch of work to do and they give you a bunch of peers to do it with, and you just swap. And it's a great system. It actually recommended to people. With that said, there there are some lasting kind of memories that I do take from that. And sometimes I'll even talk to the team about it. I'll be like, hey, here's an exercise we did at alt MBA. Maybe you guys should think about it or try it. Or just on your own personal time if you wanted to try something like this, just to bend your brain. And that's what a lot of it is. And one of the biggest takeaways from alt MBA is, do the hard part first, right? A lot of people are just like avoiding the hard part. They'll get, they won't focus and conquer the hard part. They'll just go and be like, oh, I've got emails to do. And like, they'll just start doing emails instead. But like, if you conquer the hard part first, embrace discomfort, like all these things that people are talking about, that was stuff that I was learning in 2019 with the alt MBA program.
Love that. So, with that, how would you classify your leadership style? And has that evolved since, you were running your tech company and leading into good feels?
Yeah, I think I'm much more aggressive when it comes to getting shit done because when I was leading my previous companies, it was you know, hey, we're running a company. It was almost like a vanity project. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, we're running a company and we're doing things and blah, blah, blah. But were we doing the right things? Probably not. We were doing a bunch of work. We were doing work. We did redesigns in our website and we really tried to understand our customer base. We developed personas. We did all these extra things. But at the end of the day, I think we could have did more. I could have gone to more events. I could have been because we're in the same cohort as like Nerd Wallet and I can't remember half the names anymore, but like those group of companies that were coming up, we were all founded around the same time. And so we definitely could have been more aggressive. We probably could have got VC money if we really tried. We probably had something really big in our hands, but we just kind of like we were playing business, not necessarily being doing business. And with this, I'm able to actually say like, oh, let me correct that in my head and actually be super aggressive. Like my life depends on it, right?
Right.
then that's a different mindset. If your life depends on something, you'll do whatever it takes to actually make it work. To the point where I remember I had this former advisor who put this in my head, which I think is very valuable for people, especially on the collection side, which is a whole nother thing we don't have to discuss here. But if somebody isn't paying you and you need to get paid, you have to act like they're taking food off your family's plate. Like, this is your money. You did the work. You sold, they sold the product, right? And
And
you got to respond in a way with passion and vigor to be like, you're literally taking food off of my family's plates right now, off the table. So that's the kind of aggression that I go in with. No, I'm not like yelling and shouting at people. It's more of a conversation, but it's like, I know there's a means to it. I know there's a way to get there. And I don't know necessarily on the phone call that I'm having with this person or face to face interaction how I'm going to get there just yet. But in the back of my head, I know ultimately I've got to get collections done, or I have to get into a new store or whatever. And I'm doing whatever I can using different sales tactics and stuff like that, which again, I did not have as a tech person. Sales, I was like, I don't do sales. I'm good. I talk to computers. I don't talk to people, right? That was my motto back then. Whereas now it's very much just like, I'm people first. I'm like, how do I get in front of as many? So one of the things that we do here is I told my sales team in July, I was like, I've got to meet 10 CEOs, set up meetings. Like, I'm already doing my own meetings, but like, I'll set up 10 actual meetings, right? And I will show up, I'll wine and dine them, shake hands, kiss babies, whatever it takes to make sure that this relationship is actually going to be a long-standing relationship and not just like a one-off, purchase from us.
yeah, building those partnerships, and not just transactions, so to speak.
Right. It's not transaction. It's literally like these, especially in Massachusetts cannabis, it is a very small group of people you're talking to, right? And I love to hear all the echo chamber of all the business gurus out there that are like, especially on the cannabis side, like let's go run a bunch of ads. There are millions of people out there who can buy your products. And it's like, well, no, there's 350 stores in Massachusetts. Those are my customers. I only have 350. So yes, I have to actually build strong relationships with these people.
Absolutely. So, kind of staying in line with that, you obviously have, the hemp derived product that you're going D2C there, and then you're building those relationships one to one from a wholesale standpoint with the 350 dispensaries in Massachusetts. So, one, what caused or made you want to make the pivot, so to speak, into hemp derived, and what challenges has come from that that transition?
So many, Lars. So the reason for the pivot was because I'm actually drinking an uninfused sample. You can see it says uninfused on the yellow line there. I know my thing's bugging out here, but it says uninfused on the side. But this is our OG product. It was in a
Okay.
glass bottle. It's delicious. We still drink them to this day, the uninfused versions. Like I said, that little yellow stripe there. We have maybe like a pallet left. That's all we have left of these, but a whole office just chug these all day because they're delicious. We make really great seltzer. The problem is the market in the licensed cannabis industry has not developed enough to the point where distribution is of any meaningful size, right? We're talking about onesie twosies. So a person comes in, they buy two of them, and a pre-roll and a bunch of other stuff, and a pack of edibles, pack of gummies or something like that, and they walk out. So that doesn't financially, we can't make that work. And so
Right.
earlier this year, we actually just killed their entire line, and we still had some in tanks. We were just like, just dump it. Like, it's not worth the squeeze. It just isn't. So that was one of the things that was really kind of like hounding us, was like, hey, we were one of the first on here, so why aren't we more popular? Then what ended up happening was the new hemp D9 rules, not the new ones, but the 2018 Farm Act and all this other stuff, yada, 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 allows us to be able to put in products across the nation, right? Now,
Hmm.
not all states, and there's more states coming online that say either it's permissible, it's not permissible. You can do D2C to our residents, or you can't do D2C to our residents, and we're abiding by all those rules as best we can because we're a small company, so it's hard to keep track of all these things. But from us, it was since the very, very beginning, has always been about access. It's about access. It's about going where people are and providing them with the benefits of cannabis. That's what it is. And so I was not a cannabis consumer. I was not some dude who was rolling his own joints, 5 years ago and growing my own flower and stuff like that. That wasn't part of my life. It only because I had a medical issue, like if we going back to the original question, which is a very common reason why people get into this. That's the only reason. So I was like, wait a second, if all these benefits exist, I gotta find a way to get this to as many people as possible. That's literally what it was. And so for me, it's always been about access. This is not a money grab. This is literally about how many people can I get. Of course, there's money involved. Don't get me wrong. We do sell a good amount of these. It's about getting as much of this product into people's hands as possible, right? So from our perspective, the pivot was really saying Massachusetts can't support drinks, right? It can if you're, it can support one drink basically or two brands, and that's really it, right? Because they have the distribution, they've got the trucks, they can do one case to a store and be happy with it, which is insane to me. Because it's probably cost you $150 to just deliver it, and it's like $35, maybe $60 worth of actual like revenue on it. So you're losing every time you send out like one case at a time, right? Somehow they're they're able to make it work, whether they have VC backing, they're publicly traded stock, or whatever. Again, no judgment there. You do you, and I'm going to do me over here. But that allowed us a very quick way and a very quick, easy decision to be like, listen, we already have all the relationships. We already have our SOPs and formulas. Let's go into the hemp side. And based on all the regulations, based on talking to our attorney, this was a very easy decision for us to move. That particular one line, not all of our stuff, just the seltzer specifically today, at least. That's the only thing we really are pushing out in the DDC.
The regulated market and low dose beverages, not a great combination, as pretty much all the data will attest to. But even as someone who is a cannabis consumer myself, and I love beverages and I seek out beverages, probably do more research than most average consumer. Going into a dispensary and purchasing a beverage is not an overly fun situation for a lot of different
reasons. Show your ID like 7 times, and you gotta you get the press to get patted down. Whatever. It's obviously every dispensary is a little different, but it is not an easy experience. And if you walk into a liquor store, though, right? You're gonna pick up your 12-pack of Sam Adams. You can pick up a 12-pack of Good Feels also. So it's just that's where people are. They're not going to dispensaries. They may never step inside a dispensary, or you could use this as an opportunity to see that for the people who do enjoy this, maybe they will walk into your dispensary, right? Because they're like, all right, let me level up. Let me go to the next thing. And I heard this company Good Feels also has a product called Good Vibes, which has 500 milligrams in it. Let me try that now. And so they will be walking to the store now. So we see this as a gateway to get more customers to a certain extent also.
Focus on the consumer is how are you gathering and then ultimately incorporating consumer feedback in product development, and then ultimately any business strategies or decisions you're making.
Yeah, I mean, we've done so much research, and we have small groups of people that we're always surveying, right? The numbers of people we've surveyed at this point, it's got to be over 1,000 people, like what we talked to and surveyed at this point. So the way we look at it is, there is that old adage about, people wanted to, if they wanted to get places faster, they would, how do you say it? Like, Ford would have, they wanted a faster horse, not necessarily like a car, right? So customers, how much do they know? So there's a little bit of that into this also. So it's not just like, hey, we're going to do whatever the customer says. It's more about the fact that we have to shape this in the environment that we're in, right? And so, like, for the most part, Good Vibes, when we launched Good Vibes specifically, we surveyed a ton of people. They were like, yeah, we really want a lot of THC. And we're like, all right, we can deliver on that, Whereas, and then obviously it has to taste good. It has to, be portable too, because a lot of people, there's a syrup on the market that was like a 4-ounce bottle. And it was like a medicine bottle.
Yeah.
And there's a couple others that like medicine style like it, but people are like, I don't really want to be looked at like an addict. I'm like pouring like a shot like into a, because some of it's kind of like a lean knockoff. I'm not sure if it's familiar with that term. And has an opiate A lot of people have died. A lot of people have like succumbed to like this opiate addiction
Yeah.
because, through these types of syrups. Whereas we're taking from a wellness perspective, we're like, no, we're not like that. Actually, on a per serving basis, we're 0 calorie and zero sugar, right? So from our perspective, surveying is the way we establish either the truths or we establish our hunch, right? So because for us, it's just like, hey, we have an idea, we have a concept, and I have a whole list of R&D projects we're working on right now, and we're actually someone's in the lab literally right now doing a bunch of R&D, and we don't know if they're going to work or not. And so after we develop it and we internally like it, then we'll seed it out to more people and get them to try it. And if they like it, and typically it's in the form of CBD samples, um, if they like it, then there's a good chance that we'll end up releasing it. And so because we spend all this time and effort and we're a small team, so for the most part, we try to only put, we do a lot of shots on goal in a sense as R&D internally, but
Mhm.
the only ones that matter we actually go forward with and launch.
So how many total SKUs do you have live right now? And let's just say the regulated market.
Um, we have product lines. SKUs are going to be harder off the top of my head, but product lines, I think we have five. We have the beverage enhancers. We have the Good Vibes syrups. We have Good Nights, which is our sleep product. Um, we have Good Vibes X. We have Good Vibes Plus. So that's five. Yeah, and they're distinct. Good Vibes has three of them in itself, just because of that. But under all of those, we have two or three. And in Good Vibes, the basic Good Vibes, which is just 500 milligrams of THC, I think we have five flavors right now, including an unflavored option, which is, obviously it can be very popular for people who want to put in their coffee. They don't want grape flavored coffee. They just want like
Right.
coffee.
Right.
So that would probably put us close to like maybe like 12 or 13 SKUs in Massachusetts cannabis.
So I like to ask all my my guests this question. Besides Good Feels, what other products do you either have in your fridge or do you consume
Mm,
regularly?
yeah. So I I'm swimming in weed. I
Same.
I get offered it all the time because I'm in the industry. You go to these events, whether it's a party, a private party, or the flower expo, whatever, there's sampling. Now, not every event allows sampling, but some of the ones that do, people are slipping pre-rolls in my pocket. They're like, hey, you gotta like this, and they'll just slip it. And I'm like, this is insane. But I don't smoke.
Yeah.
So so since I'm swimming in product and I actually don't smoke, or vape or anything like that. I really only consume my products because I know where they came from. I know how they were sourced. I know how they were made. But it's not to say I'm not a fan of a bunch of companies. Of course, like Cantrip, like those guys, we kind of grew up together. They launched before us, but like we kind of grew up in the same ecosystem in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So those guys are obviously I'm very fond of. I would say Cycling Frog, just because of they're a beast, you know what I mean? Like they undercut
Mhm.
price everywhere, so it's like it's hard to compete on that. Like if they're on a case pack, if you're selling at 62 and they're selling it at 48, for 5 milligrams still, it's like, again, I don't know how they're able to keep it that consistently low. Maybe they've got some financial backing or something like that, but for us it just wasn't reasonable to go that low because at that point you're just not losing money, but you're like barely able to scrape by. Who else? Breeze. Obviously, I'm super envious of the D2C numbers. They're always pumping stuff out. They have the benefit of having a Lion's Mane only product, which allows you to go into Amazon as well as TikTok, which,
Mhm.
and we have, like I said, behind my board, we have a bunch of R&D out there. Who knows? I don't think I mean, Lion's Mane isn't really attractive to us right now, but who's to say if we can put that together? We're such a small team to be able to do that. Unless some kind of big funding comes through, it's not like we're going to be able to scale up that really quickly. But there's another opportunity there. Because once you establish a brand, which we have, right? Good Feels is a brand, and
Mhm.
we've been in the industry for 4 years developing these things. Actually, it's 2024. August of 2020, we incorporated, but I was developing these formulas back in 2019, right? So it's been a minute for us in the market, and we've built a really strong brand in Massachusetts, especially nationally. TBD, we'll see. But that's how it happens. You know what I mean? Like if you have a strong brand and you constantly reiterate your marketing points and make sure everybody understands what you're about, then it's much easier to do these kind of product launches off to the side. That's why we're able to launch Good Vibes.
Yep.
We were already in like 90-ish stores at that point. So introducing Good Vibes, you built the distribution channel. Now you just have to pump it full of more products that people like. Um, so What's your question, by the way?
Other products
I
that
get.
you're using.
Oh yeah, other products that I'm using. I would say, um, I just take a ton of supplements because I'm very active, and athletic.
Mhm,
Cannabis products that I take. I mean, I just have lots of friends who I recommend products for, but I don't necessarily like. I like Coast Cannabis. I don't
mhm.
take their gummies though. Especially not especially, but as a vegan, it's hard to find good gummies out there in general. But Coast does a really great job, I would say. I mean, there's just a number of companies in Massachusetts that I definitely respect and I love what they're doing, and they're doing it right. They're not just in it for the fast buck, for instance, but actually consume what's in my fridge right now. I mean, we have tons of stuff in the fridge right now. I do have Cycling Frog in the fridge right now. I have Levia in my fridge right now. I've got Sip maybe even in my fridge right now, which is like a can. It's like a local brand that they never went into Hemp Delta 9, and a bunch of like local-ish brands like that. But there's definitely some Cycling Frog in the fridge over here because we also do R&D, which is like, hey, how does this taste? How is their
Yep.
grapefruit versus our grapefruit and stuff like that. So we're always constantly comparing ourselves to try to make sure that we're always doing better and better and better. We actually just produced we're about to produce our next batch, and we just tweaked our formula again to make our grapefruit even pop harder. And so it's going to be like when you open the can, it's going to be like squeezing a grapefruit in your face. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to sharing this with our audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Lars. And I wish you the best of luck. You're doing an amazing job. And I do want to say from the deepest part of my heart, this is why we'll succeed. Not just us, but the rest of our crew of Hemp Delta 9. It's because of people like you who are out there putting the work in to be able to make this an actual proper channel, a proper category in across the nation. So thank you very much for that.
You are welcome, and thank you for the kind words.